Two pugs were fighting for their lives in extreme heat, but their owner refused to give them up. When animal lover Isabella St. James first clapped eyes on pugs Lois and Clark in the late summer of 2017, she was appalled. The experienced rescuer knew the overheated and neglected dogs she saw in the dust and dirt of a California yard were at death's door. As a champion of the breed, she decided to make the pug's owner an offer that he couldn't refuse. But unbelievably, that is exactly what he did. Heartbroken at not being able to save the dogs' lives, St. James was forced to leave the lot empty-handed and full of tears. The 42-year-old actress and author St. James has had a fascinating life. Born in communist Poland, her family escaped to Greece when she was small, before travelling to Canada. After university there, St. James settled in California to study law and began dating Playboy head honcho Hugh Hefner. Indeed, she covered that time in her life in a memoir, Bunny Tales Behind Closed Doors, at the Playboy Mansion, published in 2006. These days, however, St. James is known to her legion of fans as the Pug Queen. Indeed, under that banner, the dog enthusiast rescues abused and neglected pugs before seeking out loving forever homes for the rehabilitated mutts. St. James documents her exploits on the Pug Queen Facebook page, which boasts an impressive 50,000 followers. According to her social media biography, she is a girl on a mission to change the world one pug at a time. In fact, it was through this social media page that St. James first learned about Lois and Clark, two little pugs who had suffered an appalling start in life. A Facebook user had tipped the dog rescuer off about the ailing animals in early September 2017, after the Pug Queen fan had grown concerned for their welfare. Later that month, St. James told animal interest website The Dodo about the order of events. She explained, "One of my followers on Facebook sent me a message and said, 'I drive by this house every day and I see these pugs. They've been out here for years in the pouring rain and the heat.' By the sound of things, St. James had no time to lose. Consequently, she rushed over to the California property immediately. When the pug lover arrived, she found two dogs left in the mercy of the elements outside a small dilapidated house in a rundown concrete yard. On that particular day, temperatures had soared to 105 degrees Fahrenheit. As a result, the pugs were in a terrible state and panting wildly. Describing the scene to the Dodo, St. James recalled, "It was a tiny little house, and right next to it was a big dirt lot, and there was an empty trailer standing there. I could see Lois, this really chubby little dog, in a hole in the dirt. He'd literally dug himself a hole in the dirt to stay cool." However, while Lois's predicament looked bad, Clark's seemed much worse. "I thought he was dead," St. James admitted. "He was just lying there." The Pug Queen then made a beeline for the small house in the hope of speaking to the animal's owner. When the owner answered her knock and came to the door, St. James discovered that he was an older man. The resident was of Hispanic origin, and unfortunately, he only had a little bit of English. Nonetheless, the animal lover was not going to let that stand in the way of her rescue attempt. St. James described their ensuing interaction to the Dodo. "I told him that I had recently lost my senior dog, and I wanted to inquire whether he was willing to sell these dogs to me," she remembered. "I would like to give them an indoor home where they don't have to suffer in the heat and 105-degree weather." However, despite St. James's offer to take the pugs off his hands, the owner refused to give his dogs up. So the animal rescuer next made an attempt to appeal to the man's conscience. St. James said, "I told him that pugs are not made for this kind of weather, and that they're suffering. They can barely breathe." As St. James continued to plead with the neglectful owner, Clark began to hack in the background. "It was a horrible guttural cough," St. James recalled. "He still lay there with his eyes closed, coughing and coughing, and I said, 'He's sick, he needs medical care, he needs to go to the vet.'" Nonetheless, the man remained impassive, growing desperate. St. James tried another tactic. She offered the owner $500 for the dogs, but he still would not budge. Consequently, the pug raised the ante to $750. Still, the man did not play. So the animal lover made him an offer she thought he just couldn't refuse: $1,000. As a former player in the Playboy world, St. James is probably not used to men saying no to her. but it seemed that even a 4-figure sum was not enough for the owner to hand over his sick dogs. Consequently, St. James left the property utterly deflated, believing that Clark was doomed to pass away in that dirty concrete yard. However, as she was leaving the scene, the Pug Queen had a stroke of luck. She ran into a neighbour who revealed that the man's son and his wife also lived at the house. Consequently, St. James decided to leave the couple a letter to see if they would be more compassionate and understanding. The following day, St. James received a phone call from the pug owner's son. This guy said, "I hear you came here trying to buy my dad's pugs," she told the Dodo. I said, "Yeah, I did, and I would still like to do that." And he said, "My dad will take the money because he has zero money." The very next morning, St. James went to collect the sick animals and delivered them straight to a local veterinarian. Subsequently, the pug protector learned that both dogs were malnourished and overheated. Furthermore, they had rotten teeth, eye issues, outgrown nails and arthritis. And on top of that, Clark was still suffering terribly from his cough. With that in mind, Clark had to remain at the vet's while Lois went home with St. James. "When I first brought him into the house, he was scared to move," the Pug Queen recalled to the Dodo. "He was never allowed in at his old house, so he looked at me like, 'Are you sure?' However, it thankfully did not take long for Lois to settle into his new surroundings. The pug began to explore St. James's home and soon found the best spot in the house. His favourite bed, in this little fluffy pink bed. St. James said, "His big chunky butt barely fits in there, but he likes it. I think it makes him feel very snuggled up and secure." After a few months in St. James's care, Lois recovered well and was successfully adopted. Meanwhile, Clark's rehabilitation took a little longer. As of February 2018, he was still living with St. James. However, she was hopeful that the canine would find his forever home. And why Lois and Clark? The Pug Queen revealed all on her Facebook page. She wrote, "They were named after the great American explorers because these two pug boys have just begun the journey of their life to explore kindness, care, attention, comfort, shelter, and most importantly, love." Please share this video with your friends below.